Hello, everybody. My name is Ian Kirkpatrick. I'm an author, idiot, and loin streamer, and today we're going to be talking about the idea of insta-love because I saw a video earlier a week or two ago, and it made me want to address the trope, for lack of better words. And I got some hot takes to start this out with. But before we get started, let me ask you: how do you feel about insta-love? What do you feel about insta-love's usage in stories? Do you think it's outdated? Do you think it's poor writing? Do you think that it has its place? What are your opinions on it? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Before we get started on the actual video and the discussion though, couple of things. Number one, if you enjoy what I do here on the channel, please remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Number two, if you would like to be featured on the channel, check out the links down in the description below. The number one way to be featured is through Lamwai, the monthly prompt writing contest, where I give you a prompt, you write a short story using that prompt, and on the first Monday video of the month, we bask in your creative genius. The second way to be featured is if you are an indie author and you have a book out or a book that is coming out. If you submit it to the Fresh Meat feature, that is your first chapter, that'll be read here on the channel to hopefully help more readers find your work, because I promise you, you've done the work, they are out there. The third thing is, if you would like to check out any of my work, it's available at any of your favorite places to get books, including the local library upon request. My newest novel, Body More Zero, is coming out in October, featuring these fine gentlemen over here, a pair of unlikely brothers who adopted each other due to their circumstances, and they go through it. I'm excited to share the story, and yeah. Ironically, Ralph over here has a bit of insta-love, though it's also a bit of faded, but well, we'll get into that. We'll get into a couple of things. But with that said, let's jump into the topic today. So first, I'm going to share an opinion of mine. Hot take: prepare yourself, probably strap into your seat so you don't fall over. I don't think the problem is insta-love. I think you're just a bad writer. I think, like all tropes, it depends on how it is used. And I think if you cannot sustain a plot without sexual tension of will they, won't they get together because, or they're fighting each other, you're probably just a bad writer. And again, that's also a generalization and a trope. So it could just be, it doesn't mean that you have to always do anything. But if you dismiss entire tropes or styles of characters based on something like a trope, I'm going to say you're probably a bad writer. We got a video here from Arabella K. Federico called "Why Do We Hate Insta-Love and Why Authors Should Pay Attention."
Hi guys, I'm Arabella. I'm a best-selling and award-winning author of these books. So, why do we hate insta-love and why should we never write it? Let's get into it.
First off, anytime somebody says you should never write something, they're lying to you. Now, you can highly recommend against writing something. You can say, this is going to be an uphill battle for you to win the audience. If you look at Tampa and if you sexualize a 14-year-old and just write smut level descriptions for 230, 250 pages, you're going to have a hard time convincing people that this is satire. You're going to have a hard time getting certain people to like your book. It's going to be a very difficult hill to climb. You can do it, but just think about why you're doing it, how you're trying to employ it. That's more or less what I would argue is there is never anything that you can say that you should say, don't ever do this, because somebody somewhere will be able to do it in a way that is groundbreaking, that is interesting, that is different. So already it's just bad advice. And I'm not just saying that because I employ insta-love in some places.
So I think we can all agree that we don't like insta-love, but why? And why is it important for you, the author, to know why we don't like it? And by we, I mean readers. And literally everybody. So
I also hate this thing where people try to guilt you or make you feel bad if you're not like them. They go, we are the people that determine everything. And if you don't agree with us, then you are outside of the norm and you should feel bad. I had somebody try to do this to me the other day. Everybody has different tastes for different reasons. And again, that's why I said this feels like a skill issue, because if this is how you approach it and you're dismissing based on this, I don't think that it's an issue with the trope. I think it's your inability to use the trope. And you think that your inability to write goes on to other people.
Here's the tea. Nobody likes insta-love because when we look at a romance, what we all really want to know is, will they be together? Will they or won't they? It's the tension. It's the mystery.
That doesn't even make sense because if you're reading a romance, you don't have a question of will they, won't they, because the end goal is for them to be together.
It's the I need them to be together because I need them to be together. And they go through
Let's just be real here. When somebody says, I need them to be together, so I need them to be together, they mean because the climax is the climax.
all of this stuff to get the reward at the end, which is them being together. So when we have insta love, that takes all of that tension away. And what is every story based off of? Every good story. And this doesn't matter what.
So I want to comment on that while I still remember that I have what I have to say. She says, what happens when your characters get together? And this is an issue that I've found in a lot of novice written books. This was also in Guns and Smoke, which annoys the crap out of me. It happens in so many stories, it's not even funny, which is why they put off the characters getting together until the end. Because once the characters have sex, once the characters are able to break through that thing, then there's nothing stopping them from continuing to have sex. So the only way that the author of those types of books knows how to sustain a story or attempt to sustain a story that is not just smut is by putting something in the way to stop them from having sex so that the entire book is not that. So then once you get to the end, the majority of the story is about them having sex because now they've been together, so there's basically no story. Meanwhile, up until that point, it's about the two of them trying to have sex and being unable to have sex for exterior or interior issues. Whether it's, oh, I don't believe that they actually like me. Oh, I think that I just saw them macking on another girl. Oh, I just slept with the train guy. And so now Jesse has the wrong impression of me and I'm teasing him because we have to sustain this for another 200 pages. That's what it is. It has nothing to do with insta-love being a problem because the climax, it only has an issue when the climax is the climax of your novel. Example would be Jan. So Jan in my book, Boom, 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 he goes to the cities. He's from a small town nowhere in Ukraine, and he ends up in Washington, D.C. The first time he gets off the plane in the airport in Washington, D.C., he steps into the building and he sees this girl with blue hair and he is smitten. That is the most beautiful woman he has ever seen. He knows that she is going to be his wife. He is positive that woman is going to be his wife before he even speaks a word to her. She is that beautiful. Of course, she gets away because the feds stop him from being able to interact with her. And then later he runs into her. But what happens there when you've got insta-love? The tension in that relationship, it doesn't mean that they instantly get together. It means that it has now entered a courtship because even if he is the one to have fallen in love with her so fast, he still has to convince her to date him. It's not a mutual instant love. So now there is a pining, there is a courtship, there is a trying to get her to be with him, and then there's the boundaries because they don't sleep together. That's not a goal. He's just trying to court her because that's where that is. Another option for this is in the story that Monty and I are working on, the Western series called The Legend of Bill Cassidy. The first book opens up with the introduction of the oldest Cassidy brother, Tommy, running into this mansion in Utah and actually being taken care of by the heiress of that mansion, or the only daughter of that mansion, Marcella Bailey. She hears a noise downstairs when she's in the main part of the house, and then she goes down and sees this man bleeding out in her basement. So then she goes upstairs, gets some medical supplies, comes back downstairs, takes care of him, and as Tommy is bleeding out, he's kind of delusional, and he thinks that he sees an angel in this woman. And I mean, fair enough, right? Look at her. But after he spends a couple of days recovering with her, they talk to each other and he listens to her and she nurses him back to health. And after he leaves, or when he's ready to leave, she invites him to come by anytime he's in the area and she will give him hospitality again. And so he comes back again because that whole thing didn't feel real. And then he comes back again and he is in love with her. They've only seen each other 3 times. He already has feelings for her the first time he leaves that house because it was just so incredible. And then every time he comes back, which is those 2 other times, it just solidifies those feelings. Where on the third time that he visits, he tells her his name, and she says his name, and he falls even more in love with her. That is basically the night that they get engaged, because she says his name back. He starts making moves on her, but she says, I can't do that. That is something for married people to do. And he's like, well, I want to marry you. And then she gives him one of her daddy's guns, because Marcella is the daughter of a big time gun manufacturer. And she tells him that her daddy said, you got to protect the things that you care about. And this is the best way for me to protect you, by giving you one of our best guns. And so that gun and her knowing his name is pretty much the promise that they're going to get married. And it's so cute because he wants to impress her, that he starts, cleaning himself up when he goes to visit her. And she's writing letters to him while he's gone, so that when he shows up again, she can give him all these letters about just kind of her thoughts, as if, I was thinking about you today while I was doing this thing, and I wanted to share this experience with you. So I wrote it in this letter. And she just collects letters to give him. But that would count as insta-love. After he came back to, after she got out of take care of him mode, she noticed just how attractive this young man was, and the rest is history there. Then you've got the situation here with Ralph, right there with the black hair, and him in Bodymore Zero, where you'll actually see it a bit more, but you won't fully see it until the second book in the Numinous series, Grief Eater. And Markie shows up as Marcia in Bodymore Zero. And Ralph just knows when he sees her for the first time that he needs her. Like, he's been missing this thing his entire life. Parts of him have just felt empty. Parts of him have felt so alienated and alone. And then he sees Marcia's image for the first time. And he's like, I need her. And then he sees her a second time and he says, I need her. But there are complications that go along with it. And then he sees her in Grief Eater. And that same thing clicks. It is the reunion of two beings that needed each other, that were parts of each other. But that is an insta-love. And it doesn't block the story, because the story is not about them getting together. Them getting together is just part of the story. But the climax is not the climax. And that's where your problem really comes, because you start getting into the issue of, well, if the climax is the climax, then them getting together can't happen too early, because otherwise we hit the end of the story. It just goes to show that you have no background story happening in your plot line, because everything dies once the characters get together. And I think that this is why often in these romance stories, you have a first and a second novel specifically that always include amnesia or cheating or suspicion of cheating, or a third wheel. Oh, she's talking to that other guy. I must be the third wheel. Because you've got to insert that tension that separates the characters in order to keep them apart. You have to create that miscommunication that inserts the tension to make them mad at each other and keep them apart. It's also why in Guns and Smoke, you end up with Bonnie telling Jesse, you end up with Jesse going, Bonnie, I love you. I care about you. And Bonnie is like, no, you don't, over and over and over again, as he's proving that he cares about her. Because if she accepted that all of these expressions of feeling and care, then they would get together, and that would be the end of the story, because the climax is the climax. So this is really only a problem in erotica or stories where the climax is a climax, which I would still call erotica, even if there's only one scene in there, because everything is so sexually tinged.
What genre it's in, if it's a Disney movie, or if it's an epic sci-fi fantasy 7-book novel. What is, if you know me, you know the answer to this, but if you're new here, it is conflict. Conflict is the key to every good story, and I will die on that hill. Fight me. You can't win, okay? Conflict, it's everything. And yeah,
I would like also a definition for conflict, because yes, conflict is a driving factor of a story, but you're not always going to have head-to-head conflict. You're going to have possibly smaller battles of conflict, interior conflict, and it's not necessarily going to be this headbutting. I'm thinking of stuff that's like with My Dark Vanessa, which was read just recently. The conflict wasn't really between Mr. Strain and Vanessa. It was between Vanessa and the exterior circumstances. It was between Vanessa and herself and what she was facing, and Vanessa and her relationship with other people that were getting messed up. But there wasn't really a driving conflict throughout that story because it was a character piece. That's not, again, not to say that there was not conflict, because the conflict in that story were little skirmishes between different people based on the circumstances, but it was not an overall confliction story, because it was about watching the interior conflict, the conflict with the idea of this social responsibility, and also her dealing with her trauma. But it wasn't this, they need to be at each other's throats or else they're going to get together.
Yeah, insta-love completely eradicates all the conflict. It takes
Again, how, and so she's saying insta love immediately erases all of the conflict. I just gave reasons how, but if it's not clear enough yet, let me give a couple more examples, because this just shows that she is approaching the idea of romance as the main conflict, that the only way that the characters could be in conflict with each other is if they are against each other. Is if there is that competition of will they, won't they get together? Will they, won't they stop biting each other's heads off? Will they, won't they climax together, right? But instead, you can have external tension, external conflict. So going back to the idea of Marcella and Tommy, they meet, they fall in love. The conflict for them is entirely external, because what happens is he is an outlaw. He is a dark-skinned outlaw in 1889, I think it was. I think that's the year that we've set it in. And she is an upper class, like a very, very wealthy white woman who is the daughter of a gun manufacturer. And her father has been preparing her to marry one of his friends since she was basically born. Like, what, she's 17, and the guy that she's supposed to marry is like 35, 36, something like that. Because her father wants to create this empire of the family. It's going to be Bailey, and it's going to be Maxim and Bailey, because Maxim is a metal manufacturer. So then you're going to have the gun manufacturer and the metal manufacturer built together. They're going to have the greatest thing going on. And so the promise that their families, the promise of their family's fortune lies in the marriage of his daughter to this manufacturer. However, secretly, Marcella falls in love with this guy who visits her secretly in her house that her father is never going to approve of. After they've had their night of basically getting engaged, where he tells her his name and she gives him the gun, slowly but surely, she starts testing the waters with her dad to see if she can get her dad on board with Tommy. You know, she starts asking him how he feels about Indians, if her dad's ever talked to an Indian man before, and trying to ingratiate him to this idea of who she knows Tommy is. And like, well, maybe daddy is like the way that he is because he's never talked to anybody like that before. And that's okay, because I never talked to anybody like that before until recently. And so like, I can't blame him if he's got the wrong idea. And so she does that. But eventually her father has Christopher introduced as who she is going to marry. And then she puts it in one of her letters to Tommy that she is going to be married off to Christopher in the near future. And so Tommy comes back and says, hey, I'm here for you. If you would like to run away with me, I will take you with me and we can be together. But if you stay here and marry Christopher, then I'm going to have to stop coming because you will be somebody else's wife. And so she goes with him. And this in turn causes that they get spotted when they're running off the property on his horse. And her dad assumes that this is a kidnapping, and sticks the Pinkertons on them. And so now the entire tension of will they be able to be together is all external, as Tommy and his small caravan that includes his brother and sister and then the two other stragglers, the two other in-laws, Ambrose and Daisy, they're all being chased by the Pinkertons, and they cannot get these guys off their tail. And eventually it comes to a head because these two can't be together this way. It's destroying everything, and they're on the move constantly because the Pinkertons are constantly hunting them down. And so the conflict is all external. If you look at Boom, it's a completely different situation, because in Boom 1, Jan he's just head over heels. He is just puppy love. And Blake is like, whoa, you were going too fast, boy. Whoa. I think it's near the end of Boom when he runs into his friend Alex from Ukraine. And Alex is like, who is this? And he's like, oh, my girlfriend. And she's like, what? And she freaks out because she's like, let's take it slow. But she also kisses him on the dance floor as they're trying to hide from some secret agents that are trailing him. So they've kind of got this little flirty thing going on, but they're not. And he knows that he is courting her to be his wife, but they're still just kind of newly dating at the sort of newly dating. She goes off to his country to meet his parents, but they have only known each other for a couple of days, but she is running from the feds. Anyway, so there's that. But then in Boom Shakalaka Boom, they spent a couple of months together in Ukraine, and then he's flying to North Carolina to meet her mom and her stepdad because her stepdad is very important to her. And part of that courting ritual has to do with impressing her stepdad. So part of the tension in that comes from both the external force of getting her stepdad to like him when the stepdad thinks his daughter only dates freaking losers and then sees Jan as like a foreigner who is a loser, possibly a communist because his daughter dates a bunch of freaking idiots. And then they have the feds on their tail. And part of the story is also with the external conflict of Jan trying to understand how he can make his father proud of him, what he needs to do, and how he can take care of his family. Like, he thought that all it would take would be money to make his dad proud of him. But his dad's not proud of him. He's having a difficulty understanding how to communicate with his dad, what his dad finds important, and how to be valuable as a man. And part of that being valuable as a man also connects with his relationship with what he can be and do for Blake. And so those are external forces that cause conflict. You've got the relationships, and then you've also got the feds that are hunting down Jan because he set off an EMP in Carolina, and that's a problem. Additionally, Ralph and Markie are a very interesting case of the insta-love or the fated mate situation as well, because in both of their books, before they even meet each other, they feel each other, they have a connection to one another, because spoiler alert, they're soulmates. They're basically two parts of the same soul. And so they've felt each other being absent from them even before they knew what that feeling was. They just know that they have that feeling. And you'll see elements of the other one in the other one's story. If you look at Bodymore 2, Ralph has a ring attached to his necklace that he's made along with some of his other fetishes, and that is a ring that he is eventually going to give to Markie when he meets Markie, and he's created it pretty much almost since the day that they had the seance room in the bar. You get to see signs of Ralph in Numina book 1, and when they come together, because they meet each other face to face for the first time, and they are just drawn to one another because they feel this familiarity, this need, this nothing else exists but them, because that draw of their souls together is so powerful that nothing else exists. And it actually, what Monty and I have been discovering is that draw is so dangerous that it can actually make them so codependent that they have to, part of the tension in their relationship is learning how to manage that supernatural draw they have to one another in order to be regular, independent people at the same time, because it's so overwhelming. And it is something that they have to learn to manage, and they need the help of the people around them, because once they get kind of sucked into each other, they can't pull away, and it's actually frightening for them to pull away, to like feels like severing the bond. And so that also causes tension. So the point of all of this is that there are many different ways to cause tension in a relationship that has nothing to do with the spouses or the lovers fighting each other. Just because lovers get together doesn't mean there is no tension. However, in her saying that all the tension is gone once the characters get together, that implies to me that the only type of tension she recognizes or uses is the couple fighting each other. So then that's why insta-love looks stupid to her, because she doesn't see a tension that a couple can fight against exterior issues together. Or, there's another one for Tommy, which also causes tension between Marcella and Tommy. That's going to be in book 2, or part of book 2. Because Marcella goes through so much stuff with her dad, and the way that her dad both treats Tommy, treats Daisy, treats all of her in-law friends, and once she gets taken back to her dad's house. I know you're probably going to forget all of this by the time the book is written, so it's okay. But once she gets taken back to her dad's house because she has to make that deal to save her loved ones, she's still trying to convince them that she is in love with Tommy and that she wants to be with Tommy and that that is the correct thing to do, that she gets institutionalized. And there is tension there. And she gets institutionalized. She is also pregnant with Tommy's child at this point, and so she has to marry Christopher in order to hide the fact that she's got Tommy's child, because if she starts showing before her and Christopher have had sex, then they're going to know that it's Tommy's and they're going to kill it. So she goes through a lot of trauma before Tommy is able to get her back. And once Tommy gets her back, and once he's had these conversations with Marcella's dad before the ultimate ending of book one, Tommy gets Marcella to safety. And Marcella continues to talk about her father favorably, while Tommy says he never loved you, because Tommy is so irritated that despite everything that Marcella's dad did, Marcella is still over here saying that her father loved her or talking about the things that her daddy did to love her. And so he has a difficulty understanding how she can speak about her dad in that way after everything that her dad did to them, after making him powerless to save her and putting her through so much and threatening his child. And she can't reframe her entire past to see her father as having never loved her. So there's conflict in that. And they're not going to break up or anything, but you've got conflict in that relationship of them having to learn how to communicate with each other or to learn their new roles with each other as husband and wife, which they weren't before, and to deal with the trauma that they got from that. And it has nothing to do with a third wheel. And so really what it speaks to me and so really what I get from a lot of this when it's, well, once they get together, the story is over. And so then you have to break them apart. It tells me that a lot of these writers don't have any idea how to write a relationship that works together, don't know how to write characters that work together. And so all they do is write drama. A good example of that is with ACOTAR, or A Court of Thorns and Roses, where Feyre is all in for Tamlin in that first book. Like, the whole point of that first book is the Beauty and the Beast retelling where he has to love somebody who hates his kind, who killed his kind in cold blood. And then she goes to save Tamlin from under the mountain because that's what she cares about. He sent her off to safety so she wouldn't be victim of Amarantha. And then she defies Tamlin to go in and save him. And she says, I love you. She ends that book in sacrificing her life saying, I love you. And then you get into book 2 where they're getting married and she immediately just doesn't want to marry him, doesn't like him, wants to be with Rysand instead. And so we switch over to that. And so then as far as I know, the second and third book become a battle between Rysand trying to destroy Tamlin's kingdom and Feyre being two-faced. But so it broke up that relationship that worked to do this one that didn't work, because all of the tension... because the tension relied on the characters being unable to be together. And so that's for me, that's just an immature approach to relationships. And it shows that you can't write characters that are in a relationship, that are dealing with issues, whether they're sophisticated relationship issues that you deal with when you have a partner that you have to work through difficulties with, or you're dealing with external difficulties, which I think all of the characters in Westies deal with both of those things. Ambrose and I'm 100% they do. Oh my gosh. Because Daisy and Ike have to deal with the relationship between Ike and Ambrose and Billie, because Ike is afraid of his sister getting hurt due to their past. And so he's like, he thinks he's available, but he's not fully available because he's so suspicious. And Ambrose has to deal with freaking getting Ike's approval, and Ike doesn't want to approve this guy. Ike has a bone to pick with freaking Yankees, on top of, the Yank going after his sister, being interested in his sister. And so there are other things to do, but Billie is all in for Ambrose, and that's a completely different thing. And so then Billie is dealing with the tension between her twin brother, who spends all of his time trash talking the man that she loves, and then she needs to tell the man that she loves him and show him that she loves him, and she's worried about him leaving because he doesn't want to put up with this, because that man has her heart. And so you've got this external tension and the internal tension of the relationship, of how that relationship dynamic is changed because Ike is being an asshole. So there are all these different things that you can do with a relationship that are so interesting to explore. But I find a lot of these stories and a lot of people that talk like this don't really know how to, and don't often explore those things. And that's not saying that you can't explore new love, fresh love. That's interesting too. My point more here is that insta love is not the problem. There are many ways to create tension in a relationship, around a relationship, or have a couple fight something bad together.
All
And it's an underappreciated thing.
the tension away and basically gives you the answer right up front. And although we may be a greedy bunch, we really don't want it all up front.
Oh, that also tells me right here is that means that you can't write a story successfully and have tension with characters that are one, already established, or two, married. I mean, I guess married considers already established. But Joey and Jag would be another example of characters that actually start out established and have their own tension involved with them, despite what some people might think. So Joey and Jag are the main characters of Bodymore 1 through 3. And the first book of Bodymore generally gets the response that Jag feels neglected. He doesn't feel like Joey's boyfriend because Joey is paying so much attention to Wayland. That's actually something that the series addresses in book 2 because Joey has come from a dysfunctional background where her mom walked out. She's had an abusive father living with her all this time. And so she doesn't have any positive examples of what a relationship looks like. Wayland represents her childhood because he was her childhood friend in school and he'd always been there for her. Jag is an example. Jag is a representation of her adulthood. So you've got the Joey as a kid and Joey as an adult. And these two people, her most important people in her life, she doesn't know how to juggle an adult relationship with her childhood friend relationship. And it does become a problem. And she gets confronted about it by her boyfriend, who is like, you need to pick. And she does get confronted about it by Jag, who will not allow himself to be second string to her best friend. So that is another way to cause tension, is to show that difference in relationship, that growing up, that difficulty in trying to establish how your relationships are different from a teenager to an adult. And that is with an established relationship. You can't have that tension of finding your footing and finding how you relate to people if it's constantly just this brand new thing. So having brand new relationships and finding who you're attracted to or courtship are different relationship arcs than trying to deal with, say, how you relate to your boyfriend and your best friend when you're in this sort of young adulthood of early 20s, or if you're dealing with the trauma and how you work with with your spouse after a traumatic event like Marcella and Tommy, or how you deal with overprotective siblings when you've been in a survival mode for as long as you have, like you do with the twins. Those all are different ways to approach established relationships that give you way different things to explore.
Right? We want the journey. We want the ups and the downs and the, oh my gosh, will they not be together? Will it all be for nothing? Oh, will he love her? Will she not cheat on him? Oh, we want all of.
If you're reading a romance novel, you know they're going to be together at the end. That doesn't make any sense because it's all just fake. It's fake drama until the end so that they don't just spend the entirety of the page flooding. All of that is just fake drama forced in there to keep the characters apart so that the book doesn't get water damage for half of the book. Because if your books, again, if the climax of your book is climaxing, then it makes sense why your characters getting together would be the end of your book.
All of that. Insta-love, poof, it's gone. There's none of that there. So yeah, that's basically it. Don't write insta-love. Check out my books.
Yeah, I just think that's a bad take. If you're going to do insta-love, you can do insta-love. You can do, I want to be with that girl. And in fact, that happens a lot. If you talk to some men, if you talk to some women, they say, I knew that I was going to marry that person the moment that I saw them, and then pursued, and then they got married. That happens. I don't like the idea of saying no, there are certain tropes that can never be done because somebody somewhere will figure out how to use that trope, and those tropes come from somewhere. So personally, I might not like every trope. I might judge certain tropes. I'm sorry, I do that sometimes. But I do think that there is a way to employ any trope. It's just knowing how to use it, why they work the way that they do. And I don't think it's helpful to act like this and try to make rules that say you can never do that, you should never do that, there's no way to do this, and the academy of all of us agree, so if you're different, you're dumb. Too many people try to use that appeal to the group to try to control others. And it's like, if you don't like it, that's fine. But passing rules on to people like that is not good. The only thing that this video really does for me is tell me that person probably does not write books that I would enjoy because of the way that she approaches stories like that. But the way that she approaches stories like that may entice you because you think the same way that she does, and she may tickle your pickle. So if that author, I will link the original video down in the comments below if you would like to check out her books to see her version of love and courtship and relationships. Check them out. With that said, let me know what your thoughts are on insta-love, on the trope of insta-love. And have you noticed a trend among the types of relationships that you write, that you usually do first loves, courtships, or established relationships and the issues that come with that? There is no correct answer here. There is no bad answer. There are just different types of stories, different types of relationships, and different types of situations that are explored. With that said, thank you so much for watching. Have a great weekend, and don't die.
Was that Wayland Cross in the trunk? Do you know, or is that something that's still being figured out?
The person in the trunk was not Wayland Cross.
Is he in trouble?
We don't know who did it, but as the owner of the car, the longer he's missing, the worse it looks for him.
Cross isn't a killer. For the last couple of years, the average number of murders in Baltimore has been over 300, and it's been going up. Mind you, that's only whatever the badges count as official murder, and believe me, there are people that don't count when they die. Wayland? If you're down here, tell me. I'm not talking to the badges, I've been looking for you. They found a body in your trunk. Why? Did you do that? To the left. Plain black letters read along the wall. You walked in the corridor. Once that ends, you chose the dark is on the right. My vision goes blurry, flickers black and black and black for longer intervals until I can't see anything at all. I'm not screaming anymore, but my voice echoes back to me. Where the hell am I? You're dead, Josephine. Even smart people do stupid shit sometimes, right?